You opened Google Maps. You typed in an address you had never visited. Your phone guided you there in minutes. You never once wondered if the road even existed. Now, take that phone and throw it away. Take away the roads too. Take away every map ever drawn. That is where this story begins. Ancient humans once stood at the edge of everything. Beyond them stretched land no human had ever seen. No maps, no guides, no satellites, just instinct, hunger, and the horizon. The first major migration began in Africa. Roughly 70,000 years ago, small groups started moving. Geneticist Spencer Wells documented this in his landmark study. He traced human DNA migration routes across the globe. Every journey left a genetic fingerprint in living populations. These fingerprints tell a story of extraordinary courage. Groups of perhaps 150 people walked into the unknown. They had never seen what lay ahead of them. Nobody had gone before to scout the route. They simply walked until the land changed around them. More forgotten journeys are coming your way soon. The first daily challenge was always water. Finding water in unknown terrain is brutally hard. Rivers were the original roads of the ancient world. Groups followed riverbanks because rivers always led somewhere useful. Water meant animals nearby. Animals meant food. Ancient travelers were not wandering aimlessly across the land. They were reading the landscape with extraordinary skill. The direction of bird flight indicated water was close. Certain plants only grew near underground springs. Animal tracks and dust told detailed stories to those who knew how. Ancient humans read terrain the way we read road signs. Every hill, valley, and ridge communicated something vital. This was not guesswork. This was deep earned skill. Archaeologist Chris Stringer has studied these early migrations closely. His work shows movement was deliberate and strategic throughout. Groups edged forward slowly, testing each new zone carefully. A scouting party went ahead before the full group moved. If scouts did not return, the group stayed put. Safety came before curiosity in almost every case, but curiosity always eventually won out. The first crossing of open water was extraordinary. Around 65,000 years ago, ancient humans reached Australia. At that time, sea levels were lower than today, but open water still had to be crossed regardless. The minimum ocean crossing was roughly 90 kilometers wide. No land was visible from the departure shoreline at all. These people had never seen an ocean horizon before. They built rafts or simple boats from available materials. Evidence of this crossing survives in Australian rock shelters. Madjedbebe Rock Shelter in Arnhem Land is the key site. Artifacts there date back at least 65,000 years. Researcher Chris Clarkson led the excavation team at that site. His findings pushed the date of human arrival back significantly. Those first Australians crossed open ocean without any map, without any knowledge of what lay on the other side. That single crossing is almost impossible to fully comprehend today. Stars were the primary navigation tool for long journeys. The night sky was their GPS system. Ancient humans memorized star positions across every season. Certain stars rose in the east at predictable times. Following a fixed star meant walking in one consistent direction. This was not simple stargazing, it was applied science. The sun tracked east to west every single day. Shadows shortened toward noon and lengthened toward evening reliably. A stick pushed into the ground became a working compass. These tools required no materials beyond knowledge to use. Wind patterns were read and remembered too. Seasonal winds blow in consistent directions across most regions. Coastal groups learned to read ocean swell directions. Polynesian navigators used these same methods thousands of years later. The same knowledge likely guided far older ancestors before them. Mountains visible on the horizon defined territory and direction. A distant mountain range 200 kilometers away was a reliable landmark. It told the group where they were relative to their start. River systems were the deepest navigation networks of all. Every river runs downhill toward lower land or open sea. Following a river guaranteed arrival at a larger water body eventually. Larger water meant food, safety, and sometimes other groups. Tools were chosen very carefully before long journeys began. Not everything could be carried across unknown terrain for long. Weight was a survival matter, not a convenience matter. A stone hand axe served many purposes on the move. It cut meat, cracked bone, and shaped other tools. Fire-making materials were the most carefully protected items of all. Losing fire capability in cold, unknown terrain was deadly. Some groups carried live embers wrapped in bark or clay. Evidence of transported fire appears at early migration campsites. Twisted plant fiber cordage, bone needles, spare hide scraps. These were the lightweight tools of ancient long-distance travel. Children were carried by adults during the hardest terrain crossings. Infants under 2 years could not walk long distances daily. The group always adjusted its pace to its slowest member. Abandoning group members was not a standard practice for most groups. Archaeological evidence shows care for injured individuals during migration. A skeleton found at Shanidar Cave showed fully healed major injuries. That individual survived wounds requiring sustained care from others. Someone carried them. Someone fed them. Someone stayed with them. That loyalty defined ancient travel groups more than strength did. Fear was a constant companion on every long journey. New landscapes brought genuinely new dangers at every turn. A predator in Africa behaves differently from one in Central Asia. Ancient travelers had no mental reference for creatures they encountered. The first person to see a Siberian tiger had no name, no category, no prior knowledge, just sudden terror. Adaptation happened fast, or not at all. Groups that survived new predators shared that knowledge immediately. The knowledge spread through mimicry, demonstration, and storytelling around fire. Fire at camp perimeters deterred unknown predators through the night. New plant species were tested cautiously for edibility before eating. One person would eat a tiny amount and then wait. If illness followed, that plant was avoided permanently by the group. If no illness came, it entered the group's food knowledge. This was field science with mortal consequences for the tester. Climate shaped every migration route that ancient humans took. Migrations followed green corridors across the ancient landscape. Green corridors were strips of habitable land between deserts and ice sheets. Researcher Robert Foley mapped these ancient green corridors in detail. His work shows migrations followed rainfall patterns as much as instinct. When rains moved north, people followed the rains northward. When drought spread, groups pressed west or east to escape it. The Sahara Desert was once crossable and green. Genetic evidence shows multiple human crossings of the Sahara in ancient times. Today, that same land is one of the most impassable on Earth. The world ancient humans walked through was unrecognizable from ours. The crossing into the Americas was perhaps the boldest journey. Around 20,000 years ago, the Bering Land Bridge connected Asia to Alaska. Sea levels were lower then, and vast land between was exposed. Ancient groups walked from Siberia into a continent nobody knew existed. Not one human had ever stood on American soil before them. They were the absolute first people on that land. 2 continents, an entire half of the planet, entirely empty of humans. They walked south from Alaska following enormous migrating game herds. Within a few thousand years, they had reached the southern tip. That is a journey of 17,000 kilometers on foot through unknown terrain, across mountain ranges, river systems, jungles, and open deserts, with no map and no knowledge of what came next each day. Geneticist David Reich studied the DNA of these first Americans. His research confirms multiple waves of migration into the Americas. Different groups came at different times using different routes south. Some may have come by raft along the Pacific coastline itself, hopping between ice-free coastal zones one stretch at a time. This coastal migration idea is backed by important archaeological sites. Monte Verde in Chile dates to at least 14,500 years ago. If people were already that far south that early, they moved fast, or they arrived on this continent much earlier than assumed. Every new excavation rewrites what we thought we already knew. The distances ancient humans covered across their lifetimes were staggering. From East Africa to Tierra del Fuego is roughly 24,000 kilometers. Humans covered this entire distance on foot and by raft, over thousands of generations, but still. On foot, no fuel, no engine, no supply chain behind them, just legs, lungs, and a refusal to stop moving. Children born during these journeys knew no other kind of life. The constant movement was simply their existence and their normal. Their descendants would arrive somewhere entirely new one day, and they would call that new place home without question, never fully knowing what their ancestors had crossed to get there. The full scale only becomes clear looking back from above. Every continent except Antarctica holds ancient human remains today. Each one was reached without any modern navigation technology at all. No map, compass, clock, or engine existed to help them, by people who had no word for the place they were heading. Because no word existed yet for somewhere nobody had ever been. The next time you feel lost somewhere unfamiliar, pause. Remember that unfamiliar is exactly where this species thrives best. That restlessness in a new and unknown place is ancient. The same instinct carried the first humans across this entire planet. Every place you have ever been, they got there first.